Next item on the agenda, or the first item on our agenda this morning, is the approval of our commission minutes from May 24th, 2023. I hope everyone had an opportunity to review them. It really demonstrated how much work we were doing when we were in Rio Del in May, and thank you to all of those who joined us at that event. Do we have any comments from commissioners, questions, or corrections to the minutes of the May 24th, 2023 meeting? For those of you who are joining us on Zoom, if you are a commissioner, it would be helpful if you turned your video on. We have the commissioners, please. We have a very small screen, and so you're going to have to basically intervene and say, I would like to, Commissioner so-and-so, I would like to have a comment, because as big as this screen is, we cannot see your faces. So I hear no comments, changes from commissioners. I will now ask if there's any members of the public who have comments, changes, corrections to our minutes. Comments. I will close public comment. I will entertain a motion to approve the May 24th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Kim Lopez. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Kit.
Sorry, who was that?
Kit Miyamoto.
Second by Commissioner Miyamoto. Please take the roll call vote.
Chair Silva.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly.
Aye.
Commissioner Claire, represented by Diane Gould.
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes. Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazura.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan.
Aye.
Commissioner Miyamoto.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit.
Aye.
Motion carries. I have a presentation this morning and a request for action from us from the multi-hazard building performance assessment using UAV-based technologies. And it's a proposal regarding that technology. And I'll hand it to our executive director for an introduction.
Good morning. We'd like to welcome Dr. Tara Hutchinson from the University of California, San Diego Structural Engineering Department. She's going to be speaking to us today about an add-on project to our cold form steel shake test that's going to happen next August. Tara?
Thank you so much, Andy. Let me check the audio first. Is it okay on my side? Can you hear me fine?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And now we go through the sharing. And just want to confirm that you can see a presentation, a slide deck in presenter mode.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much to the Commission for the opportunity to present this proposal today. On behalf of myself and my colleague, Professor Kuster, the title of our proposal here is a bit verbose, but I think it captures a number of important ingredients. It is multi-hazard, earthquake and fire specifically, building performance monitoring using UAV-based technologies, with the hopeful endeavor of advancing these tools for use in the field and in practice. As Ande mentioned, we envision this to be a small but fruitful add-on to the upcoming test program, which has now been upgraded to occur in 2024. And a portion of this, of course, and several important portions of it are supported already through the Commission's contributions. So first, to set the tone, we may discuss the concept of UAV. UAV, I'm going to just use the acronym Unmanned Aerial Vehicle, sort of colloquially throughout the discussion. We've seen UAVs have a broad utility in a wide range of natural and man-made hazard, remote sensing, and diagnostic fields. They've matured to monitoring both before and after hazard status of a wide range of infrastructure. During a natural or man-made hazard, though, the event has seen, let's say, less monitoring during a particular event. That's because the event has already occurred, the earthquake has occurred, we might be going out afterwards, the fire has occurred, or the timeliness and short-term nature of our ability to actually be in the field has been a little bit more reserved. And obviously, access is restricted due to humanitarian needs first and foremost. But fortunately at UC San Diego and other facilities across the country, but specifically where I am, we have a large outdoor shake table. So that allows us a really unique opportunity to help advance the concept of UAV-based remote sensing, because we do have the utility of connectivity to GPS due to the outdoor nature of the table, both prior, during, and post-event. So, and then the other obvious situation we have at our utility is that we control or we know when the hazard will occur. So primarily the earthquake, but also in our program next year, we'll be studying fire hazards, live fire hazards. So let me just tell you very briefly, or remind us of the capabilities of our LH Post, what it is, since I'm going to use the acronyms colloquially. LH Post stands for the Large High Performance Outdoor Shake Table. It's now been upgraded to 6 degrees of freedom capability, and it's been a pleasure to host a number of the commissioners recently to visit the facility. We tout ourselves as having the world's largest outdoor shake table. As this facility being the world's largest outdoor shake table, it is a national shared use equipment facility. So that means that researchers from all over the country can come and use the facility through the maintenance and operations support of the National Science Foundation NEARI network. Complementary to that, what we'll introduce in this proposal extension is the capabilities of the drone lab at UC San Diego. The drone lab has accomplished all phases of UAV development, deployment, data collection, and analysis for a wide range of applications. And I just show some snapshots of the types of design, fabrication, control, instrumentation, and deployment that is capable through the infrastructure provided by the drone lab. The applications that have actually been supported have resulted in rapidly distributed sensor arrays, courtesy of a range of novelties in the UAV design specifically. And I'll show you one which maybe touches on the applications we deal with in earthquake and fire scenarios, for example. This is just one example of one toolbox that one of our students built, actually. Excuse me, sorry. This particularly touches on the UAV's structural design and our ability to organically grow that design for the needs of deployment. So you see on the right here, as deployed, the UAV looks more like a basket. In flight, it automatically generates its wings, so to speak. That allows this particular unit to be either ground launched or released from the air, which can be obviously fruitful for situations where we're thinking about addressing wildfires, smokes, other thermal load scenarios, environmental scenarios, and as well earthquake needs, response needs. We believe that UCSD, coupled with our two tools here, the shake table and the drone lab's capabilities, is quite well positioned to present this proposal. And we did quite a bit of work during the recent Tallwood program, which is currently ongoing at the outdoor shake table, collecting earthquake response records using UAVs of more than 80 earthquakes, resulting in about 344 drone flights. Complementary to that, we captured about 400 individual LiDAR scans. We generated 6 full-scale photogrammetry models of this particular test building during different phases, which is certainly important as the evolution of the building has progressed. So this has certainly given us the experience, and to give you a picture of what we've done in that work, during each earthquake test, one UAV would be hovered, let's say, at each of the 3 ample viewing positions to capture video recordings. You can see a plan view here of this particular test specimen in the upper right. You can see an east east-facing view, east-placed view on the left image and a north view on the right image. We use targets actually on the building as well as ground targets. So targets on the specimen that's moving, its features that are moving, that helps isolate any drift of the drones if we have ample target distribution at the ground itself. That's something unique, I think, that we've been able to study within our toolbox. We also use RTK GPS to measure the UAV's position at an accuracy on the order of centimeters. So let me show you the 3 drones that we deployed on Tallwood. We have an M300, DJI M300, a Mavic 3, and a Phantom 4, and there are other units of similar capabilities. The M300 is a particularly interesting heavyweight drone that we're proposing, UAV that we're proposing to upgrade as a part of this proposal, if approved and moving forward, because it has a wonderful 4K resolution camera already outfitted with a 34 by 19 millimeter sensor just for its plan view. It can capture at 60 frames per second, and we've already tested out some payload ideas with this Mavic 300 unit. Let me show you just what those videos look like. I hope the videos play in reasonable fashion. This is a plan view of a test, a motion from the Loma Prieta earthquake, which was imparted on the structure in X, Y, and Z axes. The motion was scaled to an MCER amplitude, resulted in an interstory drift of about 2%. You can see the targets that are placed, the checkerboard targets. We're using those targets to determine the absolute position of the rooftop, which is obviously challenging if you think about the elevation. We have no reference point for monitoring that elevation. So this, coupled with GPS units that are mounted on the building itself, give a wonderful knowledge of what the response measurement or response is of the roof itself. We can do similar things in the elevation views as mentioned. This I put this video here. I placed this video in here because I hope it sets some context to the scale of the problem as there's folks attending this particular shake, and we're looking from the north side at the test specimen. And you can see the movement of the table platen. You can see the fixed position as well of checkerboard patterns that are on the ground. Those are our references and allow us to subtract the relative position of the UAV itself and identify within millimeter resolution the response of the test specimen. So we do believe this gives us a fantastic vantage point given the site. There are a variety of tools that we've developed internally in-house in order to enrich our understanding of the response of key features. And so I just show one example here where we would identify pixels. Every pixel is a sensor in a scene, in an image, and this is a great way to determine positional information. Edge detection algorithms are well matured, and we take advantage of those. We're not proposing to developing any further tools in this regard, but we're proposing to use our toolbox, which is already available to us, to enrich the subsequent cold form steel program. I mentioned that we've advanced the pipeline for using the UAV response measurements directly using high resolution videos. One of the key tricks, as I mentioned, is the movement of the UAV itself. And so we reposition the UAV, but relative to the ground level, just using geometric matrices of every single pixel. And we've created, I think, a rapid process to do that. And I show a little video here on the right. Let's see if that'll play. You can see the red identified. This is a approximation of the centroid of those points. And we run through a series of statistical analysis on these process red points, let's say at the roof. We study other points, et cetera. But importantly, if you see the blue information here, they are stationary. They are stationary, and those stationary points are really important because actually the UAV is moving, and that's the problem with most, that's a research problem right now, but we've been able to solve that. And as a proof of the pudding, here's one case of a comparison of the analog data, so that's a double integrated accelerometer in green, and the UAV process data in red, and you see they track each other quite robustly. So we have these tools. As an experimentalist, many of us are familiar with these tools. These are, in contrast, I would say, the analog wired sensors. And whether you're doing an experiment or you're out in the field, this is what one tends to need to deal with. Here's the sensor placed, a single axis accelerometer here, a single axis linear potentiometer in the lower left, and every sensor needs to be wired. And in the case of a large specimen, needs to come down the side of the specimen, needs to be bundled like here on the right, and ultimately here in the upper right, needs to be wired into a data acquisition system, which can cleanse it and send it to a computer. So our proposal, our request of the commission is to consider an expansion of our cold form steel effort next year. We're asking for the resources to extend this effort with two specific tasks in mind. The first is to deploy and collect UAV-based sensing systems during that program, but at first to enrich the payload of the sensing tools that are aboard one of our heavier weight UAVs. We'd particularly like to enrich it with particulate temperature, wind, and humidity sensors that could give us information, obvious information during the live fire test program, which is supported by the commission, which could be critical to characterizing the surrounding environmental conditions during those live fire scenario tests. And the second task is to develop, as a part of our journey here, to develop and disseminate a UAV inspection protocol manual. And actually, this idea came apart largely through discussions with Ande and Gia. It is a wonderful idea because there is no such community standard, let's say, regarding how UAVs are deployed, what knowledge they should have a priori, whom they should be communicating with. So we're hoping that, the things we learn in research, we can help offer insight through in a more formal fashion by documenting some of the best practices we've gained over time. We have citizen scientists to building inspectors, I believe, that are out there using perhaps hobbyist UAVs, but there's really no practical guidelines to maximizing what we can get before, during, or after an event. We would like to poll the community, work with city building departments in California, engineering construction firms, and even the field reconnaissance community as a part of this task. In terms of scope, what we believe we would need to accomplish this would be some support for the research team and some support for the sensors that we're thinking about putting on board the UAV. Fortunately, though, this work would leverage the available UAV-based tools. I shared with you some of the capabilities of the drone lab. And importantly, obviously, it takes a village to build and test a large full-scale structure, whether it's a building or a bridge or even a large multi-story segment of a building. And so this extension would leverage from the availability of those resources. And I'll stop here, Ande, Tanya. I have backup slides in the event there's any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to our commissioners and ask if any have questions or comments at this point.
I do. Let me see how to do this. Options.
Emoto.
Yes. Hey, Tara, thanks so much. That was a very clear presentation, and I thought it's very interesting that using a drone, to make the research process much more efficient. That's one thing, right? That's pretty interesting. You could save a lot of money doing that. But also, same time, this particular research usage for research can be expanded into the actual practice, on the field, and especially the pre-earthquake and post-earthquake. So obviously, there's a ground deformation, but I guess you can see at the bottom to top, and you can I guess that's how to compare, right? So you're gonna see the pre-earthquake condition of a positioning of the building, and you do same measurement, right? And minus the ground deformation point, and you can see the difference between two. That's what you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the crudest, let's say, change detection that one could approach with it. I mean, it's a scalability question. I know you know very well in your work when you go out in the field, it's a scalability question. You may be looking at a very minute detail of a soft story of a building, or you may be looking at a catastrophic scenario which is multiple buildings or multiple infrastructure.
Mhm,
So that's sort of the beauty of photogrammetry in general, I would say.
mhm, mhm,
And we have some pretty high resolution cameras already on board.
mhm.
And I have actually backup slides if you're interested in the unit that we're thinking about upgrading with the sensing tools.
Mhm.
But in that sense, one could change the sensor pretty easily, I think.
Mhm,
We
mhm.
would tailor it towards what we can do at the shake table, because that's a controlled lab environment.
Yeah, but I think so. I guess I understand the research point of view. It really makes sense, right? And I understand some of your comments about that, how we can expand it into the actual, practice components of it. In a part of a research, do you actually get into the more of that, like how it can be used in actual practice of that, say, disaster, structural damage per se, you know?
Yeah, well, this building next year will be damaged. So we'll have
Mm.
an opportunity to compare and contrast. And a lot of
Mhm,
what one collects with imagery is, a lot, because you take a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot of your work. When you
mhm,
take that high resolution imagery, you're
mhm,
comparing and contrasting across
mhm,
similar materials. And so when we do it in a lab environment, at least it's a ground truth. We can take the photogrammetry before, we can run through and collect very large, we call them digital twins,
mhm,
right? Here's the specimen before, and here's the specimen
mhm,
after. And by that contrasting, there's so many computer vision tools available to us if we want to look at damage assessment. That's a whole nother topic that emerges. What we're
mhm,
proposing here is the point-wise data collection of
mhm,
thermal information, particulate information. So that's why I emphasize the hope that these tools can also be used for multi-hazard. I think that
mhm.
addresses a lot of the things that, as an emergency services, OES has to deal with across its broad, range of hazards. And since we're doing the live fire test, it's kind of like, oh, it's natural. Let's try, let's try to integrate that knowledge into the field of view. We can see burn scaths on physical infrastructure, and that'll be obvious, but we won't know if it's still hot. We've
Mhm,
also explored with the idea of putting thermal cameras. But
mhm.
thermal cameras, I think, would really push our budget at this point. We wanted to keep it to something very manageable in terms
Right.
of sensor payload
Yeah.
for next year.
What do you think about scalability? And I understand
So
that this,
Commissioner Miyamoto, can I see
yeah,
if anyone else has questions? Then we'll circle back to you again if you still have questions. Here in our chambers, Lori Nazura.
Thank you, Tara. And my name is Lori Nujra, and I do represent Director Ward from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. So, I'm looking at it through that lens. We're also the state's Homeland Security Agency. So my questions, I have two very short ones. The first is, are the drones that you identified that you're using, are those US made with US built components?
Okay, that's a great question. I will be totally transparent in that we do have some Chinese-made drones. But if that's a concern of the commission, we have payload units that are completely US made and US built that we can select for this task and that we can plan to install the sensors on.
Copy that. Thank you. Appreciate that transparency. And then the other, you just alluded to in your response to Commissioner Miyamoto, but when you listed off potential interested parties, I didn't see OES there, but and you also early on mentioned that obviously an area would be closed to humanitarian efforts, but even before that, it would be closed to emergency response, and the value of getting a UAV into those areas is great. So in order to seek out those possibilities of getting in before say others can get in, I would highly recommend including OES in both local and state. And Kevin McGowan is also an OES representative from Los Angeles in those discussions, because there are certain paths that will need to be paved, and let's not consider that those aren't going to be made available to you. Maybe we can.
Yeah,
So
no.
happy to get engaged with you on that front.
Oh, Laurie, I really appreciate that comment. I think I'll be transparent again. That was just simply an oversight on my part, focusing on building inspectors, city of LA being an obvious one, city of San Diego, just because the network is close by, so geographically close by. But so far in our work with the planning for next year, I would say, extremely positively, Ande and Jia and the commission and others have been fantastic in connecting us with different parties to try to build up the opportunities to leverage from the seismic and fire part of that. In fact, just yesterday we had the fire marshals. We hosted and met with the fire marshals on campus. They were able to spend some time with us and discuss ideas which would be important to them to capitalize on next year's program. So that was simply an oversight on my part, and perhaps just thinking it's already there listed. I would definitely want to leverage from OES's connections and field reconnaissance needs to support what we learned from the models that we're able to deploy in a controlled lab environment, and any tools that are outcoming from this work. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. And I would look forward to connecting with Commissioner Gallahan and yourself on that topic.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kim Lopez.
Thank you, Tara. I just want to get a scope of the cost. Can you share a little bit about how much has been expended on this? What you envision or project cost of this project, so fully not built up, but fully realized?
I think I had a budget prepared. Is my slide not shared still? That was the last budget. I didn't really go through that. I rather just gave a conceptual. Am I able to share that again, Tanya?
Round numbers would be fine too.
It's in the staff report as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're requesting resources for the research team. That would be myself and Professor Kuster. We don't get paid over summer, so we're requesting a little bit of summer salary for that, for our time on that. But most importantly, we're asking for the support for one doctoral student to dedicate 1 year of his time for this. So that's 3 academic quarters, or 3 quarters, 1 full academic year. And then we have some resources we've set aside for the estimates of the particulate temperature, wind, and humidity sensor. Those are we already have a power board. We have a few of the pieces to do it. So I already did a cost estimate of that. And then of course there's indirect costs. The bottom line is a request for $95,000. The lion's share of that is really our student support. The actual sensors is a fairly minimal cost, since we have a few of the boards already to be able to control the sensors we're thinking of.
That's all that you would need. There's not another phase after that, because I know that's what you're seeking in terms, but there isn't a feature.
I'm so sorry. The audio is coming in and out for me.
She was requesting, is there additional funding that you'll be seeking in the future, but I'm not sure that's in front of us on the table today.
I just want to get a scope of what something like this you envision the overall realization, because right now we're doing the research and testing it out. I just want to see if you had a sense of what that total cost could look like.
I think to accomplish the 2 tasks we've outlined here, I have a very clear picture in my mind of the resources needed. I know what it costs to support my 1 student that I have in mind to undertake this task. I know what the sensors are going to cost. So no, I don't expect any additional resource needs for these tasks. I feel very confident that I made a very reasonable budget to accomplish these tasks.
Representative Gould, do you have any questions? I'm going to go back to our Zoom. Commissioner De La Cruz, any questions or comments? Commissioner Garnes,
Thank you very much.
any questions or comments?
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. And
Commissioner
apologies for coming in late.
Oh, no, we're so glad you're with us. Commissioner McGowan, any questions or comments? Evidently, you've been volunteered for something.
No, no questions or comments, but I'll link in with Lori after.
And Mr. Connolly, any questions or comments?
None. Thank you very much for the presentation.
And Commissioner Miyamoto, I'll go back to you. Do you have any additional questions before we bring it back and invite public comment?
Yeah, Tara, I just want to make a comment that thank you so much for your presentation. I think this research can be really change maker. I really do, not only for research community, but actually at the after disaster assessments and so on. So I think it's fantastic. I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Miyamoto. At this time, I will invite members of the public to see if they have any comments or questions. Close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. I have a question. It would certainly help and enhance the research project related to the shake tables. Can I ask the executive director to explain the craft fund, how much we have in it, and what the protocols are for funding?
Absolutely, thank you. So the CRAFT Fund is the California Research and Assistance Fund. There's approximately $2.8 million remaining in that fund. We have about $400,000 that will be encumbered for the cold form shake table test. So there's about 2.4 million remaining. We have a couple items on the agenda today for funding and a couple projects that we're doing that will take some monies as well. So there's significant funding still available to cover what we need to cover. And because this is a university, we would work with the university. There is a 25% cap on this funding in terms of administrative overhead costs, which are considered in proposal. And then we would, assuming that the project was approved, work with Cal OES contracts to move that project forward.
Is the craft fund replenished, or is it basically, are these one-time funds that we're allocating for these various projects?
This is a one-time fund. It came from a lawsuit a number of years ago with an insurance company, Century 21. There's $2.8 million remaining in it. And once that is gone, that fund is extinct.
So this is a request for $95,000 to be allocated from the fund that we oversee. And are there any further questions or comments before I seek a motion? I would invite a commissioner to make a motion.
I'd like to move to approve $95,000 from the Seismic Safety Commission funded through our CRAF to UCSD.
I second.
So I
Next
have a
question.
motion from Commissioner De La Cruz and a second from Commissioner Miyamoto to allocate $95,000 from the CRAFT Fund, which is administered by the Seismic Safety Commission, for the multi-hazard building performance monitoring system using UAV-based technologies, which is through the University of California, San Diego. Would we have a roll call vote, please?
Can we have discussion? I have a question because the write-up says $99,000 proposal and this says $95,000. So it's on page 25 of the materials. Oh, my apologies.
Well, thank you. I was about to have a panic attack.
I'm
So we're good.
sorry.
Let's take a
Me
roll
too.
call vote before
Me
Lori
too.
finds
My
another
apologies.
typo.
I'm ahead.
Chair Silva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Claire, represented by Diane Gould, Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Laura Nazura,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan,
Aye.
Commissioner Miyamoto,
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit. Passes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Hutchinson, for being here with us today. And we look forward to seeing the outcome of this research project.
Thank you very much for the time. I very much appreciate the input and the healthy discussions and support of the commission. And I look forward to seeing you all in San Diego very soon.
We look forward to it too. Particularly those of us who are in Sacramento and where it's really hot.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah,
The next
take
item
care,
on our
everyone.
agenda is the Northridge Anniversary Outreach and Education Proposal. And Mr. Benthian, for the Director of Communication for the Education and Outreach for the Southern California Earthquake Center, is going to make his presentation. It is a request for $99,000 from our craft fund to support the project. Mr. Benthian, are you with us? I saw you a moment ago. We can't hear you because you're muted. Your audio still isn't working, even though you've turned off.
All right, do you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Welcome. We look forward to hearing about your project.
Pick the microphone that works today, right? So should I just get started with my presentation?
Yes, please.
All right. There we go. So thank you, everyone. We're, of course, coming up on the 30th anniversary of the Northridge earthquake, January 17th, 1994. So next January.
Talking, you've lost your audio again. So we don't hear you. Maybe I would suggest you turn off your video to see if you will get a better, more stable connection.
I lost the connection for a moment. I think I have to reshare my screen.
Yes, please.
Of course, it's happened right now. It never does. Our mission is to really coordinate all the science on earthquakes in Southern California as our natural laboratory and communicate that information to the public. As of February, we're actually, with our new funding from the National Science Foundation, USGS, and others, we're going to become the statewide California Earthquake Center. So same acronym, but really acknowledging the statewide work we've been doing for many years, both on the science and in our education and outreach program, including the Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill, our support and administration of the Earthquake Country Alliance and tsunami zone activities with support from Cal OES. And we also have a very comprehensive set of internships and career development programs through our overall program. The Earthquake Country Alliance is a very large public-private grassroots partnership that we created 20 years ago. We're commemorating that anniversary this year at an event coming up in August. And we have statewide committees, regional alliances, and we do get funding from Cal OES that comes from FEMA's administration of NEHRP support to states, the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program. And our websites include earthquakecountry.org, terremotos.org, basically the information in Spanish, Shakeout, both for California and all the other regions, and Tsunami Zone for supporting Tsunami Preparedness Week in California and other exercises in other states and territories. Of course, the Shakeout happening, just to update, 4.8 million already registered this year. And last year we got to 9.5. We anticipate increasing that as we continue to rebound after COVID. And a key activity that, or set of resources we've developed over the last 20 years are the 7 steps to earthquake safety used by many organizations in their materials, and what to do before, during, and after. A lot of our messaging is really focused on how to secure items so they won't fall, and non-structural mitigation, as well as what to do, the proper procedures, not only for people who can get down under a table, but also for people in wheelchairs and use walkers and other assistance devices, really the comprehensive messaging. And we're really fortunate through support from Cal OES and FEMA over the last couple of years to translate about 16 documents now into 16 of the top languages in the state. So really expanding our ability to reach all of California. For the Northridge Anniversary Educational Campaign, we want to bring all that we've been working on forward and combine together with a campaign to, of course, increase awareness about earthquake hazards, encourage preparedness and mitigation, and inform about what to do before and or during and after an earthquake. With the support from the commission, we want to focus part of the activity. So we really see this as a much broader activity than what we're proposing to the commission, but with the commission support, really focusing on engaging the vulnerable and underserved communities in coordination with all of our many nonprofit, local government, faith-based, and other partners. This is completely separate support from what we receive from Cal OES already. The only activity that there's some support for is the Northridge actual January 17th event in our current work plan for our NEHRP funding. This is not the support here is for basically all the other things that we want to do. A year-long set of activities gearing up this fall, but really kicking off in January and lasting all of 2024. We intend to have activities at least in English, Spanish, and Chinese, other languages on request with live translation. And other sponsors and partners will extend what we want to do to other groups, businesses, and having screenings at conferences and in homeowners associations. We actually have a lot of requests already happening. And while we anticipate most of these activities will be in Southern California and more relevant for Northridge, we do want to have interest from the Bay Area and elsewhere as we want to start to transition to what may be a similar activities for the anniversary of Loma Prieta, 35th anniversary, coming up on October 17th next year. So the set of activities, many based around our Quake Heroes film, which I'll be talking a bit more in a moment, large events with a preparedness fair tied to our 7 steps to earthquake safety, which we've done. It was amazing how it worked. Additional screenings and other venues. We've had interest from LA County libraries through LA County Office of Emergency Management to have events at libraries, but also the community centers and nonprofit partners. The commemoration events, which may be joint with engineering, the CIOS, Structural Engineers Association of Southern California, planning a symposium at CSUN. We want to have a public event along with that, including a screening of the film, and then additional presentations to all sorts of groups, just kind of either via Zoom or in person. And these are all, like I say, and on the screen here, 20 plus, 10 plus. We really see doing a lot more. This is just kind of what we're putting into the budget proposed. The social media toolkit for all our partners to use to expand the messaging and to reach, many, many more people, as well as news media outreach and coverage of these events and activities and evaluation of all that we're doing. That we in our proposal, we want to work with Dr. Michelle Wood at Cal State Fullerton and her graduate students, who we've worked with for many years on evaluation of shakeout and our other activities, including some evaluation of the Quake Heroes film and its activities. So Quake Heroes is a 54-minute documentary featuring stories of people from the Northridge earthquake and especially how they helped others. We tie into the 7 steps to earthquake safety. We have scientists and engineers, including Dr. Lucy Jones and Ken Odell. At the time, he was the president of CIOS, really talking about both the science and the engineering and how to especially improve and retrofit tuck under parking buildings, which is, of course, the Northridge Meadows apartment building is where the most people died in the Northridge earthquake due to the collapse of that building. It really, the film encourages people to become trained through, so that they can help others and really show the value of that. And the production was sponsored by FEMA and NSF and USGS, the CIOS, Simpson Strong Tie, and other key partners. What's really, I'm going to show you a trailer about it, but it's really this great combination of that we worked with a production company, Romascope, combining both archival news footage, recent interviews, and with the support we got from FEMA, we were able to film live action reenactments of their stories. And it really is captivating. And people say it's very motivating, also showing the people themselves what they did, what they learned, and they sharing what others should do. Our team, we really applied the social science research for what motivates people to take action. It's really a big part of the film, as well as other filmmaking techniques on how to really engage an audience. And so really applying Hollywood to earthquake science and education to great effect. So just a kind of an overview of those featured, including a nurse and a reporter, and Larry Collins, formerly with LA County Urban Search and Rescue, or LA County Fire, now at Cal OES. People who lived in the Northridge Meadows apartment building, such as Mike and Buffy, who really featured, who rescued people from their neighbors. The firefighter who rescued the person who was trapped in the collapsed parking structure. Jackie Russell, a reverend at a South LA church, and the story of what was happening away from the Northridge earthquake, and also Ken Hudnut, now with Edison, but formerly of USGS. I'm going to share the trailer for the film, and then I'll wrap up. So this, hopefully you'll be able to hear this.
The day before the earthquake Sunday, we were just enjoying the game, yelling and screaming.
We went to the movies, so we came home, brush your teeth, get your pajamas on, and, go to bed.
And I literally said to myself, oh, it's not like there's going to be an earthquake or anything.
I happened to be in the newsroom, and I turned to the editor and I said, narration take 1 in 5, 4, 3, 2. And it's like, next thing you know, the whole room is just shaking.
So it was pitch black dark. We're feeling our way through the apartment, stepping on broken pieces of wall and ceiling.
We were trying to get out, but we couldn't because the door was jammed, and I was screaming for help, and nobody was helping us.
What I didn't see, my floor was severed. It had ripped apart.
I heard him underneath the wall, and he was just screaming in fear, help me. Please, somebody help me.
It was so chaotic. People running, crying, screaming. You don't think, you just act.
Here, this, parking structure's down. We're a single engine company, there's 4 of us, and we're it.
You're at that brink as a scientist where everybody wants to know what just happened, and you realize it's on me to figure that out.
I'm looking them in the eyes. You don't have an option. You've got to get out.
Rico, we got to get on the air. And I said, well, yeah, of course. And they go, no, we got to get on. You're the only one here. And I thought, holy cow, in all of Los Angeles.
We had firefighters through it, literally crawling through a crushed first floor.
I told them, you have to have faith. It's going to take time, but we're not leaving you.
Look around you, wherever you're living, and say, am I ready for this?
You can do a better job at anything if you're trained. And time for training is now.
Make sure your family's ready. Make sure your family has good instructions and the proper supplies. If you do that, you're the hero right there.
We can make it through this. We're going to work together. We're going to do this.
You can make a difference. You can make a difference. I mean, you can step up and make a difference in someone else's life. How awesome is that?
Okay, so I hope you could hear that well and see. So just want to share that we've had a number of test screenings and evaluation and really have evolved the film even with that feedback. Really exceptional feedback and interest. Very high ratings here. I won't go over it, but even the length, people felt it was really about right, 83%. Some people thought it was too short at 54 minutes, but we really want this to be more of a cinematic experience, not just something people walk in and out of. And when we've had the events, people have just been really moved. We sometimes have to pass out tissues because it's very moving and as well as informational. And they found the balance of that, including people, 89% people said that they were going to get more prepared after seeing the film. They really are experiencing, if you think 30 years, there are people who have been born or have moved to California or Southern California who've just never experienced an earthquake like this. So they're really good to see. We've had a number of events across the country this year. And also we're planning an event for our 20th anniversary on August 9th, where we're going to have the film with a panel discussion, including Larry Collins from Cal OES is coming down for that. We've been invited to have a screening at the big International Association of Emergency Managers Global Conference in Long Beach, and also already have some of the events we want to have planned. Our special events are where we really have the large group type of approach, panel discussion, and then have the 7 Steps to Earthquake Safety Fair right afterwards, where they can register for trainings and cert and alerts and receive supplies and learn about insurance and retrofitting. And most events have an earthquake simulator too. We had a fantastic event like this at Laguna Woods in Orange County, a senior residence area with over 300 attendees, and all our partners from the cities and counties and vendors had never seen, and us never seen anything like the response that people after watching the film. I mean, people are running out of materials. They were signing people up for trainings and alerts way more than usual. And we were packing everything up and people were still in line trying to get things. So we really see this as a great kind of surrounding the tables. And what we learned is we need to bring a lot more things. We have displays. We have a 3D model of the Northridge Meadows apartment complex. Models of how to properly retrofit the tuck under parking type buildings, soft-story buildings, and we're a 3D model of the California fault system. So we'll have these at events too. So our timeline, a basic kickoff at our event on August 9th, announcing what's going to be happening. We're going to build support this fall, putting additional sponsorships. We'll connect this year's shakeout with the campaign. Of course, then the formal launch on January 17th. Likely at CSUN and all the way through, and again connecting to somehow with the Loma Prieta anniversary too. So just some contact information, and I'll love to hear your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn for questions and comments first to those of us who are here in the meeting room. And I will go and call on each of our commissioners or representatives individually, because we actually don't get to see all of you on the screen here. It's juggling around a bit. Commissioner Representative Gould.
I'll just say that was an excellent film, and it did bring a tear to my eye as I was watching it. So very moving.
And that's just the trailer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I can't imagine what the full. I would need some tissues probably. Yeah, very very well done. Thank you.
Representative Zazura.
Thank you, Mark. So as you know, I'm representing Director Ward, Cal OES, and the Earthquake, Tsunami, Volcano program is under me. So my specific question is, thank you for that bullet that identified that you're using the funding that we're providing through NEHRP for different things than the money that you're requesting here. But could you, on the day of event, can you kind of distinguish how you plan on using the funding from this $99,000 proposal?
Probably not any. And I think we can really make that distinction. I included that bullet as kind of in the timeline, right? But that was put into the work plan, that support for the day of anniversary before this was even written. So just wanted to acknowledge that's happening too, and would be a key part of that. But I think because of that support, none of the support in this proposal would need to go to that.
Okay, and then my follow-up would be, I'd be very interested if you had some like premieres that you could, dates and times, locations that you could provide us. I'd be very interested in going and watching it. Or, if we can get a showing ourselves here for the commission, or we could probably fill a big room for you. Just looks exciting. And just so you know, because you probably can't see it, Chief Larry Collins is in the room today.
Oh, okay. Hi,
so-
Larry. Yeah,
you.
and he's a really great part of the film, and is going to be coming down to our August 9th event. But yeah, I would love to bring the film. We had a screening at the earlier version at Cal OES a few years ago, and we should definitely do that anywhere there again.
Thank you. Commissioner Kim Lopez, do you have questions or comments?
I do. Thank you for that presentation. I know awareness is always really hard to measure. I appreciated your record at Laguna Woods, that's in our community in Orange County. And I was wondering if you have, or if you plan to, as you do these different events, panels, do you plan in any way to keep some of the statistics?
You cut out a little bit, but I think basically the type of evaluation we'll do of the events are going to include observations from the grad students who will be involved in the evaluation at the event, as well as participant surveys, simple surveys. We don't want them having to sit, but basically one of the tables that they would be cycling through, we would be asking them to answer a few questions. And sometimes we'll probably have like a passport card where you go through and you get a stamp for each table, and that may enter them into a drawing type of thing. And so that would include that evaluation step too. Was that?
And that would be helpful, just going forward with what kinds of investment and strategies make the most sense for these types of efforts.
Yeah,
Going to go
learning
to those of
as we go forward, and just keeping to add in what works best, right? To keep improving, certainly.
going to ask, can you bring up the
I didn't hear the rest. Is that the question to me, or?
Thank you. Commissioner De La Cruz, did you have a question or a comment?
I had both. Thank you so much, Mr. Bendian. This is a really exciting step forward in just reaching folks through lots of different ways. We'd love to host you in Sonoma. We are doing our best to get prepared, as is the rest of California. And so would love to just continue thinking about what are the ways that we can draw this work up to many of the areas that we sit in and represent. My second question is, and I think it's kind of in line with what Commissioner Lopez was mentioning, but I'm curious about what your accountability strategies are. I appreciated your focus on folks who experience marginalization in our institutions and in our structures, as well as under service that comes from that experience of marginalization. So I just really wanted to hear like how you're making sure that you're actually reaching the folks that you're intending to with this presentation.
We have many partners across the state and that we work with regularly that we intend to partner with to identify the locations. And like I said, the events we're planning with this support will be part of a broader range too, of where we'll have other public events as well. And even at those events, we'll be tracking who's attending and inviting everyone, right? I think what we're focusing on is bringing these to particular communities that may not be reached by those by businesses who are holding events or other sponsored events. For example, we look to have sponsors where we can bring this to communities that are considering retrofit ordinances for these types of tuck under parking buildings as a way of motivating those ordinances and motivating the owners of those buildings and the tenants of the buildings to want those activities. So we already have a number of people who've reached out saying we'd like to host an event in our community across Southern California. Partnership mentioned the libraries and other locations. So we really are raring to get started to formalize kind of where we're going to be.
Excellent, thank you. I'll just say that in my experience, equity work it's actually really critical to be focused and not necessarily be broad, but say, we are going for a particular, we're going to try to do Spanish language efforts, or we're going to try to focus on, the Asian immigrant population who may, be concentrated in certain parts of our communities. And so, appreciate the, both the breadth, but also recognize the importance of having focused efforts to really ensure that you're addressing.
We intend to, the translation that we plan is to fully dub the film, not just have subtitles, but to dub all the actors, all the in Spanish and Chinese. So we got the estimates on doing that so that we can work with groups like the Listos group, not Listos, California, but the Listos group in Southern California, which focuses on outreach to the Spanish-speaking population, and work with them. Of course, our local government interest in Orange County for Vietnamese population there too. But yeah, we understand your point.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your work.
Commissioner Garnes, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you for being here for the presentation. The trailer was very real, and I can't even imagine watching the movie, but I imagine it will be very impactful. I just, along with the other commissioners, I just wonder, as far as disseminating the information and getting out to communities, I think that you've touched on that and you've answered those questions. I just want to kind of stress that there's a way that also with mailers, because there are people who, although you can get to communications, there are people who can't. And so there's got to be other ways that are getting to these, to everyone really. So I was just wanting to put that out there. Thank you very much.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Commissioner McGowan, did you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Miyamoto? Commissioner Rabbit?
I'm good.
And Mr. Connolly? I'll bring it back to do you have another question?
I did. I have one more for you, Mark. Do you plan on eventually posting the film on your website or YouTube, or will it always be invitational only?
Eventually YouTube, but we really want to focus on these events. Our experience shows that there's really great value when people see this together and that common experience, where and you really are watching it through and the impact that the film has in that mode. And we want to, we also have archival news footage that we received from like NBC, CNN, et cetera, that has limitations on how it can be used in our initial rights that we have. Everything has to be like password protected because of the footage that we have in the film. But eventually we hope to then upgrade those rights. It's expensive to then be able to have that footage included in our and put it on YouTube.
I have a couple of questions and then we'll take public comment before we entertain a motion. This is basically from what I can understand, and thank you for your presentation and the production of the video, which looks to be very impactful, is that you are using the participation and attendance at the film to inspire people to take action and gather materials. So really people have to convene and come together. Is that correct?
Well, in these events, so this is one of the set of activities. We'll have the other proposed activities too, general presentations around the region, in addition, and of course, website and all the other elements. But by being in person, they can then receive all the information and
Right.
materials that are included.
So how many people, individuals, are you trying to reach during the year 2024?
Well, that's a good question. We haven't put a specific number there. Through the event, these large events, we hope them to be at least 100 people at each. But like the Laguna Woods, we had 300. So it's also finding the venues and the communities that can accommodate that many people. And then through other events, I mean, how many people at some level we would, 22 million people in Southern California, but obviously not directly at these events, but through all the messaging through our partners as well, the materials we'll be providing in social media. I would say that, like back to the first shakeout, if we can reach a quarter of the population at some level, awareness and understanding of the history and what happened and what they can do through all the range of materials and activities that we do, that would be maybe a good ballpark, but that's obviously going to be in different ways.
And what's your total budget? And what portion is the 90? We'll say it's $100,000, it's 99. And what does that represent of your total budget needed to be able to be successful?
I have a vision of $1 million kind of level campaign that this should be overall, and so we're gearing up to a number of requests, including through our development office at USC to expand the support. This will really be a foundation for that, but a lot of events that we're going to, even individual organizations who want to have a big event that we kind of produce for them, for their employees, and for a fee for that, for us to come in and bring everything in and make all the partnerships. So I anticipate we'll have at least on the order of $300,000 to $400,000 with the ambitious goal of $1 million.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to now see if we have any public comment. Do any members of the public who are participating with us today wish to make a comment? I'm going to bring it back to the commission for any, we've all given our thoughts. Any thoughts before we make a motion? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I make a motion.
A second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Garnes, and the second is from Commissioner De La Cruz, I think, to allocate $99,000 from the Commission's California Research and Assistant Fund to support the Northridge Earthquake 30th Anniversary Educational Campaign, which is being organized by the Southern California Earthquake Center. We take a roll call vote, please.
Chair Silva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Claire, represented by Diane Gould, Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazura,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman for Building Standards,
Aye.
Commissioner, oh, he's not here. Commissioner Miyamoto,
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit.
Aye.
So the motion carries, and thank you very much for being with us today, Mark. And we wish you good luck, but also keep us informed so that we can be participating, particularly if we're in Southern California. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Next item on our agenda is item number 6. It is discussion of the ad hoc committees and action to appoint members to those committees. I'll turn to the executive director.
Thank you very much. You all may recall at our last meeting, we set up a process for ad hoc committee membership. During that process, you voted to approve the protocols, which is to solicit requests for participation in the different ad hoc committees, and we did that. We sent out a survey to you all. We received the requests. I reviewed those requests, had a conversation with the chair, and then we made some recommendations, which will be on the next slide. So for the Strategic Plan Committee, we are recommending Chair Silva and Commissioner Garnes be the two ad hoc committee members. For the Ferndale Turkey Report, we're recommending Commissioner De La Cruz and Representative Nazura for Commissioner Ward. And for the Fire Station Inventory Report, we're recommending Commissioner Wells and Representative Gould for Commissioner Clare be the ad hoc committee members. So what will need to happen now per our process is that we take a vote.
Very much. Do we have any questions from commissioners or representatives? And I'm going to go around here in Sacramento. I don't see any questions. Commissioners on Zoom, if you have a question, shout it out. Okay. You literally look, I would see better across a football field than I can see in here.
No question.
I don't see any questions. This is an action item, so we need to see if there is public comment. Do any members of the public who are joining us here in Sacramento or on Zoom have a question or a comment? Then we need a motion, closing public comment. We need a motion from and a second.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion for Commissioner Kim Lopez. I'll second the motion. So we have a motion and a second to approve the executive director's recommendations to the committees, both the strategic plan, Ferndale Turkey Report Committee, and the Fire Station Inventory Committee. Please take a roll call vote.
Chair Silva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Clare, represented by Diane Gould,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazura,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman for Building Standards,
Aye.
Commissioner Miyamoto,
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and I want to thank in advance all of those of you who have volunteered to work on a committee, and we look forward to working together. It is 11:23. We are going to take a short break. It'll be a little shorter than was initially planned due to how much time we decided to talk about the two reports or the two requests for funding, which were important discussions. So we will reconvene at 11:30. All right, everyone, we're reconvening. If you still need to have conversations or you're still doing something, please be sure your audio is off. And those of you back. So thank you very much, everyone. We're reconvening. Items 7, 8, and 9 are all similar. And I'm going to transfer this to our executive director to introduce the first item 7 and also explain what AB 100 is and why these people are reporting to us.
Thank you very much. Just as a brief overview and a reminder, we call these AB 100 reports. We call them AB 100 reports because about 3 years ago, the Seismic Safety Commission was transferred over to the Governor's Office of Emergency Services as a separate unit. We were previously an independent unit within the Business Housing Agency, and part of the statute requires periodic reporting from a minimum of a number of different agencies and to provide input on key activities and responsibilities of their agencies related to seismic safety. It doesn't limit us to this group of people or agencies that are up on screen there, but it does specifically call them out. So today we have 3 separate reports. This is an education-focused event for us. So we are talking to the Office of Public School Construction, sorry. We are speaking to the Division of State Architect as well as the California Department of Education. Report will be Office of Public School Construction. On the agenda, we were going to have Lisa Silverman, the executive officer, present. However, she's a little under the weather today. So the Chief of Program Services, Brian LePasque, has graciously stepped in on her behalf, as well as being a very important author of the report itself. So thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
In
a little bit? Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be a part of this. And I always really enjoy talking about this program. I've been involved with it since the inception of the program, and it came into legislation in 2006. The program actually began in 2007, so I have a lot of experience with it, and looking forward to sharing some of the information today. So some of the things we're going to talk about today, kind of why we're here. We'll get into that, and then we'll talk about the history of the program and the background of the seismic funding. And then we're going to really get into the program value, which I think is the most important thing that I'll be sharing today, and some of our future program goals, and then some information that you could look at in your leisure if you'd like to. So we have been invited to be here. Again, we're very excited to be here. Lisa would have loved to have been here, I'm sure, but I'm happy to fill in. And this is part of the annual reporting requirement, as was indicated earlier. And we had the opportunity to provide some information on our program that we're so proud of, and I think has accomplished so many great things. And I was telling someone earlier, you know, when you begin to look back at all the things that we've accomplished in the program, it's, you know, you get into the day-to-day process of getting through the applications and administration of the program, and you don't realize all the things that we've achieved. And so that's one of the main things. Can you go back one, please? That's one of the main things I wanted to get across today. Tanya, back one slide. Thank you. SMP was created as part of Prop 1D, and it gave us an initial funding of just under $200 million. It sounded like, in the scheme of our program, a very kind of small amount. We're used to dealing with billions of dollars in our program, but it turned out that it went a lot further than we expected it to. Since 2018, when we went through that initial $200 million, we've been able to pivot to the program funding being available through our standard new construction funds. And I'll get into that a little bit more down the line here, but that almost, as long as the program has money, Seismic will be able to be funded. They get to the top of our priority list. They're considered a health and safety project, which I'll talk about what that exactly means in the context of our program. But they get funded immediately and they get priority, which is a really essential part of why the program is so important. To date, or up until about a month ago, we have funded 107 projects, $335 million. There's been over 180 buildings either replaced or rehabilitated. And 8 of those projects receive financial hardship assistance. And that's another thing I'm going to go into a little more detail. But districts don't have to have a financial resource in order to qualify for the program necessarily. And I think that's also a very important component. It can be for anyone. Even a little school district that doesn't have the financial resources, they could potentially get funding from our program. The other thing to keep in mind is seismic program funds aren't the only way you could do seismic upgrades. You can also use the school facility program modernization funding to do seismic upgrades, or even bigger work than just patching and repairing. Those aren't tracked as closely. They're usually intertwined with a larger modernization project, but we do know that people seek seismic upgrades through their modernization funds as well. Next slide. So just a background on kind of the larger things that we do at OPSC. Since 1998, when we opened up our current program, we've apportioned over $42 billion worth of projects in California for K through 12 public schools. We've housed over 1.4 million students in new classrooms. 3.5 million students have been impacted by modernization funding. And we've funded about $1 billion in both the career technical education arena and charter school facilities. So these are our active programs at the moment. We have many other programs that have come and gone over the years. These are some of the ones that we like to highlight as they're currently active. This is a chart that you could look at a little bit more closely in the report that we provided of, it kind of splits out all the bond funds that we've had over the years, starting with Proposition 1A in 1998, and most recently, Proposition 51 in 2016. We are reaching the end of our Proposition 51 funding. However, in fact, we have reached it, but there's still residuals coming in, but it's almost all gone. More recently, we've pivoted to getting funding from state budget appropriations, which is new for us. We're able to give direct apportionments. The money goes out much quicker. We don't have to rely on bond sales. And so that's been a really blessing for the program. We're fortunate enough to have that ability to continue our program right now because we have such a great need. We have an unfunded list of projects that have been received that is about $4 billion currently. And so there's a really big need in California for school facility funding. And this just kind of depicts some of the history that we've had. So the seismic program, there's 3 main agencies involved when you're coming to funding to OPSC. There's OPSC that provides the funding. There's the DSA, and then the California Department of Education. They've been great partners with us. We work very closely with both agencies, not only with seismic, but with a lot of our programs. And we really have a wonderful relationship with those agencies and a good, solid foundation for these programs. And each one of us have a very unique role. OPSC is the funding arm. We provide the funding and we do tracking of expenditures and make sure that there's compliance and audits done on the projects for transparency of the public funds. DSA is largely involved with plan approval, and they have their 0803 procedure that is a phased approval process that districts go through when they want to come to OPSC for seismic funding. So again, DSA is instrumental in this process. They have a very good procedure laid out. All of their locations are very trained in how to help walk districts through those steps. And Department of Education also provides plan approval and make sure that the educational specifications and the plans meet all of their requirements. So all of these components come together for an application. And the number one thing that the 3 agencies do together in this program I would say, and in my experience, is to try to make it as easy as possible. If you're a district that's not very active in our program, it can seem perhaps intimidating or like a big task to come in for funding. But we have a lot of things in place to really streamline that process and be a partner with the district to not make it difficult and to make it very straightforward, very easy. And I'm going to talk about some of those things in a little more detail, but that's our hope, is that, you know, it might seem like a daunting process, but it really isn't when you get down to it. It's step by step. The Seismic program is voluntary. You don't have to apply for it. And in addition to mitigating seismic work, if there's anything that you have to do, maybe related to access compliance or fire life safety or other concerns on the campus, if those things are triggered, those requirements are triggered in order to obtain plan approval via doing the seismic mitigation work, those are also covered in the program. So if there's other stuff that comes up when you go to DSA or when you go to Department of Education that are going to be beyond what just the seismic work is going to cost, the program can cover those things as well. And then once again, funding originally came from Prop 1D, about 200 million. We got through that, and now we're working off our new construction bond authority, which, again, if the program is active and we have funding, any seismic project can come in and they get right to the top of our list and get that funding first. So this program started modestly. It was new. It was a new type of funding that we hadn't seen in our school facility program umbrella before. And I think it took a while for people to get used to how to apply and kind of how to go about approaching these projects. So we noticed initially that the program needed some improvements, and we listened to our stakeholders. They identified some pretty specific challenges that they were encountering related to the program criteria, and also I'd say the sensitivity or tenderness of the subject on a local level. It's a big determination for them to make, to say that we have a building that could be at risk, and that was a challenge for them. And so between 2009, about 2 years after the program started, and just until most recently in 2020, we did a series of program improvements, and they were focused on the things that we heard from the field. We would have meetings, outreach meetings, or go out and meet with districts, and they would tell us what their challenges were. And so we tried to address all of those. Next slide. This chart depicts some of the things that we did at each interval, starting in 2007, and again, most recently in 2020. We expanded the number of Category 2 building types that could be eligible for the program. We went up to all 14. It started, I believe, at 6, went up to all 14 now. We first reduced and then eliminated ground shaking intensity requirement as part of what you needed to demonstrate to get into the program. And then all sorts of other things too, related to not just the technical aspects, but improving the funding that was available, increasing the number of grants that could go to these projects, and other things too, like standardization of our cost estimates and forms, and all the way up to most recently, we did a really big rehaul of our regulations, and they're much more easy now to piece through and really understand the program requirements. So we've done lots of things over the years to try to help improve accessibility to the program. And again, our intent is to make this as easy as possible for people to apply for, because we know that there's such a big need out there. 107 projects we've funded, and again, 8 of those have been with financial hardship assistance. And just to talk about that for a second, so districts that qualify for financial hardship assistance can get up to 100% of the project funded from state funds. Typically, it's a 50-50 matching program. Almost all the programs that OPSC offers are matching programs. Some of them, including Seismic, you can use financial hardship. So if it's a small district that has a compromised building that qualifies for the program, and they also qualify for financial hardship assistance, they could potentially get 100% of the project funded. 181 buildings, which really blows me away. And then within, it's not in this presentation, but within the report, there's a map of California and it depicts exactly where all the projects have been funded. I think you'll see that it's been all up and down the state. It's not just focused in Southern California. We've gone all the way up to, I believe it was in Eureka. And so way up north, east, west, mostly concentrated down south, but we've managed, and we're really proud of this, we've managed to get seismic funds out to all over the state. Next slide. Here's a chart that shows you program activity year by year from the day it started until now. And there's some colors in there too, and those just depict where the authority came from. But you'll see that once we made some of those improvements, it really got the program off the ground. Starting in 2014 into now, we've had a really consistent application stream. We see about the same number of applications every year. We can count on them. I don't really remember a time in the last 10 years or so that we haven't had at least 1 or 2 projects in-house that we're working on. So it's a very common program now. We'd like to see it increase even more, but it has been pretty consistent. This depicts the differences between reimbursement for, rehabilitation and replacement projects. It's about 60-40. We've received about 60% rehab projects, 40% replacement. And this is just for those people that like statistics like I do. You can kind of see where all that money went and how many projects are in each category. About 60% of them were also funded from Prop 1D. That was our primary funding source, at least to date. Okay, so program value, this is what I really wanted to focus on. So the SMP is meant to address seismic deficiencies, number one, reduce the risk that we have out there overall in California as much as we can, and to really impact that bottom line and try to make as many buildings as we can safe on school campuses. And again, this is separate from our modernization funding, which can also be used to address seismic. The reason why I think the seismic program is so important, in addition to that modernization slant on it, is that modernization funding through SFP is meant for extending useful life of buildings, roofing, painting, HVAC, flooring, technology, things like that. Whereas seismic, that's a little bit different. That's more of a health and safety concern. And so the seismic program is integral in coming in there and mitigating those things without impacting a district's ability to do all the things that they need to do to their buildings. Most of the buildings in California were built a long time ago, and so they need their modernization funds. And so I think it's really great that we have this program. Additionally, seismic funds can be leveraged to bridge gaps in if there's an event, like we were just up in Ferndale and Rio Del. We visited those schools and saw what they did, or what happened to them, and what they're doing to try to repair. Our program can be used in addition to or supplemental to emergency funding that they receive or insurance funding that they receive. And so they can work in partnership together in that regard and save the district a lot of money that way. And I already talked about financial hardship assistance. I think I can't stress that enough, how important that is. We always look at that to see if that's an option for districts when they come in for funding. And lastly, on this one, the priority of the processing. We have a very long list of projects that we are processing, and we're only staffed and authorized to process 1.5 billion per year. So rather than coming in and waiting on a list, these projects go directly to the top of our workload, and we typically are able to turn them around and provide funding or an apportionment to them within 90 to 120 days after receiving them. That's pretty quick as far as state process goes. That's about 3 to 4 months for us to process them.
Lepask, I need to give you kind of a time check.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Because there are other presenters here, and we want to be sure that they don't have a hard stop on theirs.
Thank you. So some of our future program goals, we want to continue to promote the program as much as possible. We are targeting our outreach, especially to underserved communities that don't have resources. We think that's really important for us to get out there and partner with them. And then we want to increase the frequency of pre-submittal and pre-even design meetings. We've found that those have been so successful in helping these projects to be is maximize their funding and be as successful as possible. And while we want to have as much participation in the program as possible, we do also need to make sure that we have program accountability and that the expenditures are being reported in accordance with all the rules and regulations that we have on our program. Next slide. So here's some resources and contacts. You can go to our website. We have a seismic mitigation area on our website. It has all sorts of stuff in there, a lot of video guides and guidebooks and video, all sorts of things you can look at. Next slide. And also, I always tell people, if you're interested in anything with OPSC, to sign up for our subscription list. We don't send a lot of emails. It's only the most important stuff, but it's the best way to stay in touch and aware of all the things that we're offering. And then lastly, on the last slide, we have some contact information. So thank you very much again for having us today. I'm sorry if I went over. And just
No, we'd want to also have an opportunity for a few questions, if you
Yes.
don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
going to start. 335 million has been invested in this program since it was initiated. That's about 20 million a year.
Yeah, roughly. Mhm.
So, but now that was all and originally coming from different bond measures approved by
right.
the state voters. You said that you're now basically getting your source of funds is the general fund.
That's where our current bond funds are, not our bond funds, our current program authority. We got 1.4 billion in last year's budget and 2 billion, just under 2 billion approved in this year's budget. And that's for our entire program.
Does this count, because you're investing in the schools, does this count from funds for Prop 98 allocation?
I'm not familiar with that.
I might have the number wrong. Basically, the voters said 30 years ago that 50% of the general fund allocation has to be to the schools. Is this in that same bucket
I think
of money?
that's more local control funding formula money that they get for
Okay.
their average daily attendance. But I could get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure.
And are the funds that are you're allocating to the schools for these seismic upgrades, rehabilitations, or renovations basically qualify these facilities to be considered essential services hubs?
That's another question. Somebody asked me that earlier, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they're essential facilities or not. I know that a lot of them are used for emergency sites if there is a natural disaster, like
So
their
essentially,
gymnasium.
Probably they are then.
They probably are, but I don't know for sure.
Thank you. Other questions? I'm going to start here in the meeting room.
Is there a listing of the type of work that's been done at these locations? And primarily what I'm looking for is, it's easy to see things that are plain sight, but I'm thinking about the critical water, wastewater infrastructure, maybe some of the fire suppression infrastructure. Do you have a breakdown of the types of projects sort of that can show me that?
We have each file and we can look at them. I don't know if we have a breakdown prepared, but that is information that we would have in our files. The scope of the work that they particularly did. I would say that just in my experience, the majority of it is structural work, but I could get you some information on that.
Yes, for the future, just a categorization. It doesn't have to really detail, because I think that is very critical and tends to be sort of overlooked because we can't see it all the time. The second thing is a comment, and looking at the map of where the funding was distributed. I look at my old town of the whole Calaveras area. So for those that have not received any funding, I'm hoping that there is some sort of a circle back to those areas to understand why they did not, or if they even knew about, or if they not had the resources to do it, just so we can see why those places have no funding or have gone after the funding.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things that we always focus on. We like to get the word out there as widely as we can. We have a number of different ways that we can achieve that. The primary way we do it is we have our project management staff go out to monthly meetings at the County Office of Educations, and we present, among other things, information about our program. And we like to, again, I can talk about this all day, and we try to get the word out as much as we can. about how accessible the program is, how much it can help. And so that's definitely something that we're always looking at. We're always trying to find ways to expand that.
Commissioners who are joining us virtually, does anyone have questions? Please raise your hand, shout out, do something to let me know that you're. Don't hear any questions. One last question for you. I represent local government on this agency, and one of the challenges we see in applying for whether it's federal or state dollars in a range of categories is the application process, particularly if you're a small agency, can be daunting, and they don't have staff to do that. Are you allowing county departments of education to basically submit joint applications or bundled applications on behalf of the schools and their respective districts in those counties?
Oh, absolutely. You mean like the county office of education would assist them in preparing applications?
Exactly. Can they bundle together so that each district isn't basically
we would need
under-resourced to be able to do it?
We would need an application for each project that's being requested, but we can help you with that as well. And we offer pre-design, pre-submittal meetings, certainly, where we can have our teams help to look through what you're preparing to submit and help you with that.
Oftentimes it's an issue of staffing resources at a local level to be able to get those applications. It happened with the ARPA funds, the Build Back Better funds, et cetera, across in the federal system.
Yeah, our staff can really help with that process. We can help you fill the forms out. We can provide all the information to you. I mean, we can essentially walk you through it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, these are annual reports, correct? Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time and to explain the program. It's very important.
Next at
We
noon, high
recognize that.
temperatures set to continue this weekend across the Sacramento region.
Okay,
And an LA
somebody's
store
got
owner
their mic
feeling
on.
very blessed after selling the winning Powerball ticket. Your news starts in 60 seconds.
But I'd like to know who got the Powerball ticket, because then maybe we can help fund this program.
I would take care of a lot. Thank you for having
All right. Thank you
for
very
having us.
much.
Thank you.
Executive Director, would you like to introduce the next? Oh, well, looks like we have a rip.
Thank you. Yes, we have our next AB 100 report from the Division of State Architect, and our Representative Gould will be providing the report. We thank you so much for preparing it and providing the presentation today.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I'm Diane Gould. I'm the Principal Structural Engineer with DSA's Headquarters Office. I'm here today to present to you an overview of DSA's plan review and
Getting
enforcement.
answers. This is CBS 13 News, always streaming on CBS News Sacramento.
Triple-digit temperatures are back as a heat wave is settling in, and
Okay, thought maybe they'd tell us who got the Powerball ticket. So
I'm here today to present to you an overview of DSA's plan review and enforcement authority and our authority for regulatory development related to seismic safety, in addition to numerous other valued programs and services we provide. Through this work, we aim to make California's public schools, community colleges, and essential services buildings safer and more resilient with each passing year, offering greater protection to students, educational professionals, and the general public. So next slide. So a look at DSA's organization. DSA currently has approximately 300 technical and administrative staff statewide. We have our headquarters office, which is where I am based, located in Sacramento. We also have 4 DSA regional offices, which are located in Oakland, Sacramento, Los Angeles, as well as San Diego. Next slide. So our DSA headquarters office is responsible for our statewide programs, our project inspector certification, training, our laboratory evaluation and approval program, code development, as well as various policies, bulletins, interpretations, and other publications that we put out for the use of stakeholders. Our regional offices are tasked with our project plan review and approval, construction oversight, project inspector approval, which is approving an inspector for work on a particular project, as well as the closeout of projects at the end of construction. Next slide. So what type of projects require review by DSA? DSA is the authority having jurisdiction within the state of California for all public K through 12 schools, community colleges, as well as state-owned essential services facilities. So that's your police stations, fire stations, emergency response facilities. Next slide. We also have, in accordance with California Government Code 4450 through 4461, DSA has jurisdiction over access compliance requirements for all buildings in California, including schools that receive public funds, either in whole or in part. So that means in addition to the schools and essential services facilities, DSA is also responsible for providing access compliance review for the UCs and CSUs, any state-owned or state-leased buildings, as well as charter schools if that project receives state funding. Next slide. So some of DSA's core functions are to ensure that all school buildings comply with the regulations regarding the safety of design and construction in such a way that we're considered a valued asset to all involved parties. We also participate in creating safe and accessible schools by implementing and enforcing the regulations in 3 specific areas: structural safety, fire and life safety, and accessibility. Next slide. So our beginnings as a department were the result of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And there was a desire to ensure that public buildings within the state of California would be built with greater oversight. So DSA, as we know it today, actually started out in 1907 as the Department of Architecture, which was under the Department of Engineering. The department was responsible for planning, design, contract administration, construction, supervision, restoration, alteration, repair, and improvement of state-owned buildings. Next slide. So the next big change in DSA's responsibilities came as a result of the 1933 Long Beach earthquake. It was estimated magnitude 6.3. 120 people lost their lives in the quake, mostly due to falling unreinforced masonry. The quake occurred at 5:55 p.m. and it was immediately recognized that we were quite fortunate that it occurred at that time and not when the schools were occupied, because had the schools been occupied, there would have been a much more disastrous result with injuries and casualties. There were 70 schools that were completely destroyed and 420 others sustained significant damage. So in response, there were several significant state laws that came as a direct result of the Long Beach quake, including the Field Act and the Riley Act. Next slide. So the Long Beach earthquake prompted DSA to collaborate on the Safety, Design, and Construction of Public School Buildings Act, which is more commonly known as the Field Act. This was California's first major earthquake policy. It was enacted just 1 month after the Long Beach earthquake on April 10th, 1933. It granted authority to DSA for design review and construction oversight of schools. And the objective of the Field Act was to eliminate collapse hazards in future public school construction and limit the damage of structures due to an earthquake. Next slide. The next big piece of legislation came about another month later in May, and that's the Riley Act. So that required all local governments to have a building department. It also implemented for the first time a mandatory, design for seismic force, horizontal acceleration of 0.02 times acceleration of gravity. A few years later, we had the Garrison Act, which came along in 1939. And so what that was doing was reaching back and looking to get all the pre-Field Act school buildings either upgraded or abandoned for school use. So as it was originally enacted, it did provide some instructions and some corrective steps that should be taken in order to examine and determine what to do with the buildings, but there was no time limit established for accomplishment of that. So later on in the mid 60s, we have the Green Act. There were 2 amendments to those Garrison Act provisions. It set a deadline for the examination of those pre-Field Act buildings. And it provided immunity to personal liability for the school board members once they've initiated action to do that evaluation. And then it set a deadline for either upgrade or making buildings safe or abandon them if they were unsafe. And so the end result was that after 1977, all buildings and structures that were being used as school buildings, whether they were built before or after 1933 and utilized for school use, should either be Field Act compliant or removed from use. Next slide. Excuse me. So the impact of the Field Act was it set in place some very important requirements for California's public schools and community colleges. The drawings and specs must be prepared by licensed design professionals. They must also be verified for compliance with applicable codes and approved by DSA prior to the construction contract being awarded. The building codes that are utilized in the design of school buildings contain structural provisions that are superior to many other types of facilities, taking into consideration known seismic activity in California. The supervision of construction requires continuous oversight by a DSA certified project inspector. So there's an inspector on site full time. That's a little different than most local authorities. The inspectors come out on call. Any changes to the drawings also similarly require, or specs require, review and approval by DSA prior to commencement of the work. And then at the end of construction, the design professionals, the inspector, and the contractor all file verified reports with DSA attesting that the project has been built in accordance with the approved plans and specs. So the punchline to that is that since the Field Act was enacted in 1933, we have never had a major structural failure or loss of life during a seismic event in a Field Act compliant building. Next slide. So another big piece of legislation that came about in 1986 is the Essential Services Buildings Seismic Safety Act. And so that recognized that the desire was for the buildings providing essential services to be capable of providing those continuously. So there was the question for Brian earlier about whether schools are essential services buildings. Now, it depends on the use and the risk category, and I promised not to get too technical in this presentation, but the answer might be sometimes to your previous question. But so the Essential Services Building Safety Act brought those state-owned, fire, police, emergency services facilities also under DSA review. So we're responsible for enforcing the Essential Services Act for those state-owned buildings, but if they're not owned by the state, that responsibility for enforcement falls to the local building authority. Although the act did direct that DSA's duties and responsibilities include observing the implementation and administration of the act's provisions and providing assistance to local jurisdictions regarding enforcement of those essential services buildings. Next slide. So some of the programs and products that DSA is involved with relevant to seismic safety, we have our DSA Academy, which has a variety of on-demand and live trainings that are available to the public as well as our staff. We have our structural safety code development. So DSA is responsible for promulgating amendments, excuse me, to the California Building Standards Code, which is our Title 24. We also develop and publish interpretations of those codes and policies as needed to help stakeholders and design professionals with their understanding, also coordinating enforcement so we're consistent among the DSA regional offices. Next slide. We also have our project inspector certification program. As I mentioned, all projects require a full-time certified project inspector on site. There's also a process where that inspector must be approved by the inspector's hired by the district, but is approved by the design professionals in DSA prior to commencing work. DSA also administers all the training, exams, and renewals involved with becoming a project inspector. They have to renew every 4 years. We also maintain on our website a certified project inspector list, as well as a project inspector availability list to aid districts in identifying where they might go to hire an inspector. We also run what is called the Lab Evaluation and Acceptance, or LEA program. So any laboratory that's conducting material testing or special inspection services on a project within our authority must be accepted into our program. Once again, we have a list of the accepted labs on our websites so the districts can coordinate who they want to hire. Next slide. Another important component, we tend to talk about plan review a lot, but that construction oversight is key. After the plans are approved, excuse me, I'm so sorry. DSA is notified by the design professional at the start of construction. DSA reviews the qualifications and approves the proposed project inspector who will inspect the construction. DSA schedules visits by our field engineers who will report on the construction and the performance of the project inspector to verify compliance with the California Building Code. The DSA staff also work closely with the project inspector to ensure that the intent of the plans and specs are properly administered, and that the design professionals are also performing their required observation of construction. DSA, as I mentioned, any of our construction change documents, so anything that changes during construction comes back to DSA for a review and approval, so that we have a clean record of what was actually built. We also have the authority to stop construction if a non-compliant or safety concern is raised. I think the slide is missing, but there's 2 more programs I'll mention, and I know I'm short on time, but we also have our project certification program, which is our closeout. So DSA does not issue a certificate of occupancy, but what we have is our certification program, and there's a number of forms and reports that get turned into DSA, and then at the end, if all of that paperwork is in line, DSA issues a project certification letter to the district, which acknowledges that the building project has been completed in accordance with the requirements. And so that's kind of our closeout. So since the Field Act in 1933, more than 130,000 projects have received DSA certification. The last piece that we participate in is the safety assessment program. Actually, all government employees are required to be declared disaster server workers who can be called upon in an emergency. However, ESA has technical staff who's eligible, and we require them to obtain and maintain SAP assessment program SAP evaluator certification. And we've had evaluators assist in safety evaluations of California schools after a disaster. Some of the most recent deployments, our DSA SAP evaluators went out to Napa in 2014, Ridgecrest in 2019, as well as Ferndale just months ago. We have also had conditions where our SAP evaluators may be deployed to provide general assistance to other authorities by performing safety evaluations in the built environment after major earthquakes in other locales. Some examples were the Anchorage in 2018, Puerto Rico in 2019. So some of DSA's long-term goals, as you can see from the slide here, is continuing the work that we do to incorporate the latest science and engineering into the building codes to ensure safe performance of schools in seismic events, continue to produce and maintain our various documents, interpretations of regulations and bulletins to notify and assist design professionals and stakeholders in understanding the special regulations that apply to schools. Continue to develop and maintain training courses via our DSA Academy. And then the fourth bullet, kind of a new project that we started recently. We've convened an existing buildings task force in order to explore possible adjustments to our mandatory rehabilitation trigger. So right now, depending on the level of work that is done to an existing building, it'll trigger a seismic evaluation and then retrofit of any of those deficiencies. So we're studying the triggers now to see if because the way they're structured, you're either all in or you're out. But there's been discussion of whether there might be benefit in looking at a way to encourage gradual improvements to existing school buildings, chunking off little pieces at a time when work below the current triggers are performed. Next slide. So there are a variety of links there. Much more information can be found on our DSA website about any of the programs I've mentioned. Next slide. We also have a listserv. So if you go to our homepage and navigate down to the bottom, there should be a subscribe button. You could receive periodic emails from DSA about any new publications or educational opportunities we're offering. Slide. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions for our fellow member of the commission? I did have one. This is so important for our youth, and our future is in the hands of our youth. What level of construction triggers the requirement to have a DSA oversight? I mean, the exterior painting of a building probably doesn't, that's not construction.
Does not, no.
So oftentimes people at the local level ask that same question, what do I need a permit for? Do I need a permit to, there must be categories. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, it's tied to the, two things. There's the definition of a school building, and certain things are exempt from that. We actually, one of our various documents, we have the IRA-22, which stands for Administrative Interpretation number 22. But it is it has a table that talks about when you do or don't get to go to DSA. You're either exempt by scope, so things, like painting, or you don't, if you're putting in a light pole or a flag pole, or you're doing if you're paving a parking lot, it goes into far more detail than that. You don't need to come to DSA for new construction. There is also an exemption for alterations less than a certain dollar amount, and yeah, so if anyone wanted to learn more on that, there's more than I can cover. Just saying it, but I would advise you to check out IRA-22.
Any other questions? Lopez.
I have a geographic visual of throughout the state of California where you've seen the types of activities and just so graphic spread of some of the work that
You mean schools being constructed?
and when you do these sections and how many schools in certain have been part like on annual basis that you've been out there to check out these locations?
So the construction observation that we do happens when the project is built. DSA, and this is another thing that's a little different with our authority. So a local building department has the ability to mandate maintenance and declare a dangerous building after the fact. So DSA's authority actually only extends to when a project is submitted to us. So that's why the chair's question was so important, is that, you know, when do you do or don't submit a project to DSA? But you know, in the case of as I was mentioning, those seismic triggers, we don't have the ability to mandate things be expected after the fact. So as you're aware, building codes change over time, right? And a building that was built in 1955 under the Field Act would have been fully compliant with everything at that time. But if they've done no work to that building other than putting in new carpet and paint since then, there may be some safety improvements that need to be done. And so that's usually until they go do that level of work, that building doesn't get updated. So that was what we were looking at in our triggers, is can we, because some, depending on the structural system and the nature of the building, some retrofits can be done fairly easily. Like if you're going to do a re-roof and maybe you need some out of plane wall ties, that's a very easy fix to do. But we try to encourage that when we see it come in, but sometimes we don't always have the authority to require it because it hasn't hit those triggers. But that's what I was getting at, is we were looking at ways to incrementally encourage those improvements and also not create sticker shock to the districts, right? Because I think everybody fears that I don't want a whole seismic retrofit. That's just gonna, it'll blow the budget. It'll kill the project. So.
Questions from the commissioners who are joining us virtually? I had one last question for you. This was triggered as a result of the 1906 earthquake and the 1933 earthquake in Long Beach, the focus on schools in particular. Other than structural issues, as you expanded the scope of the work, for example, sustainability. I know that's not seismic, but this came up the other night when we were discussing a sustainability action plan in Walnut Creek, and people were trying to put the schools into our outreach, and it's like, okay, but we don't have authority as a local agency over schools and school construction, and most people didn't realize that, the public.
Yes.
So are you also exploring or working in other arenas other than seismic and structural safety?
Yes, actually, because a strict reading of the Field Act says that, and I wish I had it in front of me, but DSA is tasked with the maintenance and enforcement of all parts of Title 24. And Title 24 now includes Cal Green, which is Part 11, which didn't exist before a few years ago now, right? So we have been, but we don't have a sustainability plan review department, right? We actually have a budget change proposal that we've been trying to get through the governor's office to hire sustainability staff to do the plan review, because we don't have the staff to do the review, but we are
have the authority or responsibility.
We have the authority to say this is what is required. So it's an odd limbo position. There are a few things that we will comment on in intake because it's easy to do, but to have an actual thorough review, we would need to have a sustainability staff, and we just don't have that right now.
I find schools making those improvements. Do you also find that they're triggering structural questions because panels on a roof create weight and load and structural integrity questions? So is it?
Yeah, so that
Bit of a
goes into
circular.
that IRA-22 that I told you about. There's a whole matrix table of, when, and it is, there's a column for, does structural need to review this? Does access need to review this? Does fire and life safety need to review this? So yeah, it's very
Thank you.
detailed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that the agency does on behalf of the youth. State.
Thank you for having me.
Presentation, our third presentation today. I realized it yesterday when I was reading the reports, that we are basically hearing from all of those agencies that have an impact on schools. So the next presenter is the California Department of Education. I don't think Thurmond is here today, but let's see.
You do have Jake Wolf present.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
it's 12:30. We have till about 12:50 or 12:55 for your presentation, and then any questions we might have. Is that going to work for you?
Perfectly acceptable. And I do understand, as an emergency manager, I assess risk, and I see that I stand between the commission and lunch. So I'll try to be as quick as I possibly can.
Or an
be.
airplane or any.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If it's good with you, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. And if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and get started.
Please.
Sorry, you broke up. I'm assuming you said go ahead.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. I appreciate everybody making time for me today. I'm not Juan Mireles. He's my director of our division. He is unable to make it here today. And so unfortunately, you're stuck with me. Wanted to come in person. I tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday. So you got me virtually. I promise you, in the spirit of COVID, I am wearing pajama pants with my suit just to make things light and airy. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me first show honor to the Seismic Safety Commission. Appreciate all the work that you all have done. Have been looked back at some of the wonderful work that has been done over the past couple of years, and it all looks great. Certainly fed into what I'm doing here today. Want to appreciate Representative Nazura from Cal OES. The partnership with Cal OES is going to be integrated well throughout this presentation, and hopefully it's seen there. Also, Representative Gould with the Department of State Architect, and also the Office of Public School Construction. All of those partnerships together make up what we do on a daily basis. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to talk about our division and our director, Juan. He has done a lot of wonderful work, especially in the space of public school construction, along with safety around public school construction. Our unit that I belong to, which is the emergency services team, is nestled within his division. Juan and his division, we assist schools, districts, and communities in creating well-planned K-12 learning environments in safe and clean and up-to-date schools. And also, as I said, he oversees the emergency services team. The emergency services team at the California Department of Education really only consists of 1.5 people, really, but 2 people. One is Joe. Joe is the manager of the emergency services team. He also does the facilities end of things at the internally. facilities at the California Department of Education, and the only full-time staff member of the emergency services team is me. And so Joe does come from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. His experience is mostly wrapped into recovery, mitigation, and grants. I come from the Emergency Functions Planning Unit originally at the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, which is a unit that is underneath Representative Nazura at Cal OES. And I specialize in emergency management planning and response. The purpose of this whole presentation today is to comply with, and it was so eloquently put earlier before my presentation, to provide a comprehensive account of key actions and responsibilities taken by the Department of Education towards seismic safety and facilitating post-disaster economic recovery in California. This includes our strategies, initiatives, partnerships formed to achieve these critical objectives. I want to talk real quickly about the scope of this presentation. The Department of Education has undertaken strategic measures to enhance the seismic resilience of our schools, their facilities, and preparedness for our students, staff, and teachers, and everybody. That's roughly 1/3 of the community, and any given community is attached to the school or tied to the school in some way, shape, or form. So our focus in our department is to strengthen school infrastructures, enhance emergency response plans at the local level, improve disaster education for all K through 12 education, post-disaster economic recovery. That comes in a lot of different forms, including supporting schools through the recovery process. And we'll get into a little bit of that later in the presentation, and partnerships with various state agencies, including those that you heard from today, Cal OES, DSA, Office of Public School Construction, Department of Social Services. There's too many to name, but we work well integrated with all of the state educations or the state agencies that have some form of interest into public schools and education. Over the past 2 years, the Department of Education has worked tirelessly to bolster resilience of our schools and communities in the face of all hazards, including seismic risks. And any emergency management that's done is always done through a lens of all hazards. That means we take into account all hazards, and seismic happens to be one of those hazards that we take a look at, obviously naturally occurring. The Department of Education serves millions of students. In fact, over almost 6 million students on a daily basis, and making our initiatives vital to the state's comprehensive approach towards earthquake risk reduction and post-disaster economic recovery. And seismic events in schools, both recent and past, have underscored the critical importance of disaster preparedness. 2 major seismic events particularly emphasized in this presentation that we'll get into. The major seismic events we'd like to point out during this presentation, there are so many seismic events that we can't really go back and look at all of them, but we really wanted to take into account the recent ones that we think are highlighted. The first one is the Trona earthquake, which is 6.4 magnitude, and that resulted in significant damage to schools and in the affected area, disrupting education and impacting the local community's recovery process. Additionally, in 2022, the Ferndale earthquake was 6.3 magnitude, and you might have heard it referred to as the Christmas quake, struck Humboldt County, causing considerable damage to school facilities and posing a challenge to the continuity of education for students in the region. And this photo that you see here is of Rio Dell Elementary School. You can see that crack running through the middle of the playground. I don't know if you remember running across the playground when you were a kid, but with your awkward feet trying to make it across a crack like that, obviously there's some danger there. Additionally, this school that you see here had a shared gym that was damaged during the earthquake. That gym is currently under repair, and really it's shared with the local elementary school and the high school. So not only is it disrupting education for the elementary school, but also the high school. So all of the folks within, all of the students within Rio Dell had experienced some difficulty and some disruption in learning, especially with physical education, which is important for not only social, emotional, but physical health. So let's talk a little bit about our seismic programming. That's kind of what we're here to do. Our department not only aims to ensure the safety of our students and staff at facilities, but also to maintain educational continuity following a disaster to support community recovery. We at our department seek to strengthen our preparedness, foster resilience in our communities, and continue collective march towards safer, seismically resilient California through seismic programming. A couple things I want to point out, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. I want to talk about the school's emergency reporting system. Some of you may have heard about it, some may not have. It is a program that we developed in-house that specifically is geared towards increasing situational awareness, what's going on during disasters. And that includes seismic disasters. Through this program, we connect with local education agencies for them to report school closures. Through that program, we were able to discover any unmet needs. They have the opportunity to report that in the system. And then it also acts as a record of school impacts in a disaster, which could help fuel our capabilities and how we build our program as it goes forward. There's also, in partnership with Cal OES and Earthquake Country Alliance, we assisted in the development of an informational interview to educate school administrators and staff about their vital roles during disasters. Recognizing school personnel as disaster service workers under California law, this initiative helps to foster a prepared and responsive educational community of crisis. This video is well made. It's quick, which if you're anything like me, I've got a short attention span. So having something be quick and easy and really describing the things that I want to know is important. We feel that this video does that. So we have been working diligently to shop it around to many of the county offices of education and around at conferences, including the Safe Schools Conference, which we attended last week. Emergency operations plans at the California Department of Education. We have began in partnership with WestEd in developing an agency-wide emergency operations plan. This plan outlines our agency's capabilities to support the overall state response that's outlined in the state emergency plan during a disaster, as well as the department's various divisions, programs, and functions roles in all phases of emergency management. This project is currently underway. We expect this project to be done sometime next year. Will be helpful in outlining our agency's abilities to support those schools that are impacted by seismic events in the state of California. The Preparedness Ambassadors Program is aimed at fourth grade students. This curriculum fosters a culture of disaster preparedness from an early age, encouraging students to engage and promote disaster preparedness measures within their homes, schools, and communities. This program was developed in coordination with Cal OES, and Cal OES really took the lead on it with many other partners, and it's designed to replace items within the fourth grade curriculum. It's not additional material that has to be presented on top of what they learned. It can be plugged in directly with the fourth grade curriculum that has place for within their science and STEM curriculum, specifically surrounding disasters. We do have an educational resource list that we've created. We developed a comprehensive list of those external resources to support the needs of local education agencies before, during, and after disasters. It's available on our website, Schools Disaster and Emergency Management and Floods webpage. It acts as a vital repository of contact information and resources for schools. So if they need a waiver, if they need an extension, if they need whatever they need, it's on that list. If our department can provide it, it's on that list, and that list will grow as time goes on and divisions develop, and is not designed to be a one-time document. It is a living document. We have that on our website. There's a link in our presentation today. I encourage you to take a look at it, and if you have any questions, to reach out. We'll talk real quickly about comprehensive school safety plans. I'm not going to read everything here that's on the slide because I don't think that's necessary. I will say, however, that the California Education Code clearly lines out the specific actions that have to be taken before, during, and after an earthquake. That's Education Code sections 32280 through 32289.5. Also, there is specific wording in the Educational Code for programs like the American Red Cross, Department of Social Services, to have policies in place for those organizations to utilize structures during a needed sheltering operation. So those policies should be in place. And so schools serve as an area for people to evacuate to as a temporary evacuation point or even as a disaster shelter, because they do often exceed local building codes and they do have capabilities within them, things like high throughput kitchens with food, able to feed large amounts of people. And here's an example of us working with our state agencies. Granted, this has to do with wildfire, but I think it's important to show that when there's things going on, specifically surrounding hazards, we can leverage our relationships and our capability to pull in local education agencies to give them the needed information. We did this recently with the Earthquake Country Alliance. They hosted a webinar which we were able to provide much needed information about the programs that you see in this video or in this presentation. There's also a document. We encourage you to look at it. It's a wonderful document that was created in collaboration with Cal OES. They took the lead on developing the document. It is the California Emergency Management for Schools, a guide for districts and sites. Really is based on lessons learned from previous disasters and guides and promotes a culture of disaster resiliency and assists in planning efforts to protect the health and safety of our students. There's a lot of wonderful information, including it's even got assignment sheets for EOC. It's got Emergency Operations Center. It's got a lot of great information in there on how for schools to prepare for all hazards, including seismic. And then Project SERVE is on the federal side. It stands for the Schools Emergency Response to Violence Act. It was created specifically for active shooter, but they were able to open it up to all hazards. So when there's a federally declared event, it becomes available. It focuses on providing resources to reestablish safe learning environment and is integral to post-disaster recovery strategy for us. And so it's probably the easiest grant you've ever seen in your life. It's very simple to apply to. It's money that's readily available. It is limited. I think it's $5 million in the fund, but it does pay for soft costs during disaster recovery. FEMA, of course, has federal disaster assistance. We partner with Cal OES and FEMA to ensure that applicants have the process to apply or have the ample opportunity to apply for these programs. Can be difficult to receive funding back in order to pay for all these programs that we hear through DSA and OPSC, right, to close that funding gap. And FEMA has wonderful programs, public assistance, to be able to help fund some of those disaster recovery projects. California Disaster Assistance Act, right, is financial assistance from the state for costs incurred by local governments as a result of a disaster event. Schools are considered a special district under the Standardized Emergency Management System, and therefore they can apply for CDAA with the assistance of their county and through the approval of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Facility hardship funding was already covered in the other presentation, so I'm not going to go into that too much. They did a fantastic job of talking about it, but we leverage this anytime that we work with a school through the recovery process. Our focus in the recovery process is really, and this one also, our focus as a department is really to holistically help the schools through their recovery process, because each school is different, each program is different, each community is different. So we really try to focus on getting the information to these folks to help them make good decisions, to help them understand the landscape of opportunity that they have in recovery. And so we focus that on an individual basis with schools usually with local education agencies that are helping schools recover throughout the state of California. Seismic mitigation funding, I believe that is another Office of Public School Construction program. We do link them with that as well. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close up shop and give you the opportunity to ask questions. Here's our information. Please, I encourage you, if you have questions, reach out. We can provide you with any information, please reach out. We look forward to your partnership. We look forward to your questions. And with that, I pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. I'll see if members of the commission have questions. Representative Nazura.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake, for that presentation and for mentioning the disaster service worker video for schools. I know Representative Gold mentioned that
once a disaster hits, essentially school workers, just like us over in OES, get deputized, if you will, as disaster service workers. And yet there's not a lot of training that goes on and education about what that really means. So this video was really, really well received. And in fact, we started showing it to our local OES and other public safety. And now they want us to do a general one for all disaster service workers that's very similar. So thanks, Jake, for kind of kicking that off. But my question for you has to do with the school emergency preparedness plans. I know your number of LEAs is like way beyond the operational areas that we deal with here at OES, but are you able to review those preparedness plans upon request and provide recommendations, or do you provide LEAs that are working on their preparedness plans, maybe examples of well-written comprehensive plans or a template, anything like that?
A very good question. I think that it's important to start off with the consideration that comprehensive school safety plans and emergency operation plans are different. Comprehensive school safety plans have a lot of information regarding day-to-day school safety initiatives that they have, outlining board policies and things of that nature. Emergency operations plans, as you know, I know you know this information, is specifically focused on roles and responsibilities of that organization in the larger response. And so when it comes to comprehensive school safety plans, we don't have the capacity to review everyone in the state of California. At the request of a school, however, we may be potentially able to review an emergency operations plan. I myself would have to do that. As far as the requirements, there are no requirements for the state of California to review comprehensive school safety plans. The only thing that we have to do is receive report from the local education agency that it was in fact done. That's the only thing that we're required to do. And then if there are any that fall out of compliance, that the county offices of education are required to notify us. So that is pretty much the limit of the requirements regarding comprehensive school safety plans. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? I did have one. The fourth grade curriculum, is that a required portion of the California curriculum, or is that optional?
Well, as you know, there's autonomy at the classroom level for teachers to teach what they like to teach, and really falls a lot on the local school board to determine what gets taught in schools. Okay. This Preparedness Ambassadors program meets the requirements of fourth grade curriculum. So there are requirements in fourth grade curriculum for a certain amount of STEM, and this curriculum just plugs into that. So it is not an addition to, it's a part. It can be an optional a part of.
All right, so it's decided at the local level. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Other questions, Commissioner De La Cruz or anyone who is joining us virtually?
As Commissioner Garnes, I have a question. Thank you for your presentation, and mine is regarding the ambassador program as well. I'm in Humboldt, and during or after the earthquake, we had youth step up and come down to help every day without being asked. We are in our annual festival, we're going to have presentations, plaques to give to 3 young men who really stepped up, because we believe not only do we want them to know that the city saw them and recognized them, we want their friends and their peers and the community to see them and recognize what they did. So I think that it's a great program. What I'm wondering is if it can be expanded. The oldest young man that was there every day was 17 or 16 actually, and the youngest was 9. And so it isn't just fourth graders, and I know it's just it's preparedness in the sense of, start early. But anytime you start, anytime you put that into play, it will be impactful and hopefully help the youth of our communities be prepared themselves and be prepared to help others. So is there any plan or any possibility that it could be spread further than the fourth grade?
That's a very good question. And one I think that Representative Nazura could probably answer along with me, but I'll do my best. And I think that the content of the Preparedness Ambassadors program would not be limited to the fourth grade. It's just when you're talking about as far as requirements of curriculum, that plugs into that requirement in the fourth grade. I believe that this program, in the way that it was developed was done so well that it could potentially be used or utilized in support of any grade. It's a lot of great information. It's it's very clear. It's very well made, very easy to understand, and comes with a teacher workbook. It's got a student workbook. It's got now they even have a coloring book that goes along with it. So really, you could potentially use this, I think, at any age. It's just it would require the understanding that it probably would not replace any of the curriculum content for that other grade level. That answers the question, and I'll let Representative Nazura speak to it if she feels like she wants to.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that question, Commissioner Garnes. This was completed, this fourth grade curriculum completed on a grant, which is now expired. And it was kind of putting our toe in the water, and it's been wildly successful, and the demand has been great. And we would love to do other grades. Like Jake said, we had the teacher's curriculum, the student workbook, and a family guide, because part of it is going home to your family and sharing what you've learned and doing activities with your family to get the whole family prepared. And that is in 6 languages. So we've got plans to put that in more languages so kiddos can take those home to, various languages spoken in their home. And then we're open to the possibility of expanding it to different grade levels. It can be adapted, like Jake said. One of the things for the older, like the preteens and the teens, that we are making in the meantime until something like that happens is there's a teen cert program that's already developed and out there that can be requested by schools. And so that may be a possibility in lieu of this kind of a curriculum. But yeah, if we can find more funding, we would love to expand it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Mr.
both.
Wolf, thank you so much for being here today. And we look forward to hearing more about the work that you're doing through the California Department of Education.
Thank you. I bid you adieu, and I hope you find something to eat.
Nope, it's not about food. It's about being respectful for everyone's schedules. Our next presenter is Ryan Kirsting from the Structural Engineers Association of California, and he's going to give us an update on some code development.
Hi, thanks. And I know
you've been here for a few hours, and so thank you for waiting. I know it's been fascinating.
Yeah, it has been. And I apologize that I missed the early presentation, which sounded really interesting too, but thank you for the time. I know we're short on time. I think Tanya has my slides ready to go. I'm going to breeze through this as quick as possible. To be fair, even a 15-minute presentation can't cover the content. So
because it's going to be 10.
Exactly. So even a 10-minute presentation not going to cover it either. So I'm going to go through some really basic things, and maybe we can get a chance to talk about this in some more detail, whether it's 3 months from now, 6 months from now. There's a lot of ongoing activities that I want the commission to be aware of. So we'll go next slide. I'm representing SEOC today, but you can see on this slide, there are a lot of organizations working on the concept of functional recovery. The idea that our building codes do a good job of providing safety right now, but we're not meeting the recovery goals that we think our communities are expecting. There's a lot of agencies. I'm quite honestly, I'm involved in many of these agencies, and I'd love to report back to you so you're aware of what's happening, not just here in California, but actually at the national level as well. Next slide. Dates back to 2018. Some of you will remember there's some assembly bills in California that have been going through over the years. The commission has thought about them, been aware of them. We haven't been as successful through the assembly process or legislative process as we've hoped, but we're not giving up on that. And I want to keep informing you so we can be aware of that. Next slide. Really, I think today I want to make sure you're all aware of what's happened at the federal level. The federal level, the congressional reauthorization of the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program in 2018 really did set the stage for a lot of progress to be made on functional recovery. In particular, they charged FEMA and NIST to develop a committee of experts and then to also write a report to Congress on how they can improve, how we can improve the post-earthquake functional recovery time of our buildings. Through some building code adjustments, as well as through some other things through planning and community advocacy. We have the report to Congress written. I was actually the chair of the committee that wrote that report to Congress. And now we're working with FEMA on writing the next building code recommendations from FEMA's perspectives, which will then be submitted to the national process as well. So next slide. A little bit of a time frame. It hasn't just been 2018. It actually dates back to 2003. So this concept is actually not that new. Next slide. And here, just to make sure you understand it, and these slides can be shared later on as a resource to you, so you don't have to remember everything. I'm not going to say everything is on the slide, but the idea of functional recovery is to provide our buildings a recovery time that meets our community's needs. Everything is immediate occupancy. It doesn't mean things are earthquake proof. It just means that we're doing better to get buildings up and running when they're needed. And that time scale may vary depending on the type of building. You've heard a lot about essential services. Those obviously we want up and running quickly. But things like grocery stores, things like pharmacies right now aren't being designed for quick recovery. In fact, we've learned through the pandemic that those really are kind of essential services as well. And so we're wanting to try to match the recovery times in the building code to what our communities need. That's the concept. Overall, we do think this will save long-term costs and overall life cycle costs to both the individual owners as well as the communities that are paying for recovery. Next slide. So why are we thinking about this? Well, because the data is out there. We've been doing research for this for about 20 years now. The data is out there that 20 to 40% of modern code conforming buildings won't be able to be reoccupied or functional within months following a major earthquake. There, we haven't really been tested. Rio Del was a devastating thing for their local community. Northridge was something that was unique to Northridge as well, but it hasn't been a major earthquake like California. So not only are they unfit for occupancy, but there may be a number of buildings that are uneconomical to repair even to. People to understand that this is our way of providing safety in our building codes is actually allowing damage to dissipate the energy of the earthquakes, much like a crumple zone of a car. The problem is the crumple zone of a car is something you go to repair at a repair shop. The crumple zone of a building isn't something that's as easy to repair, nor is it as costly or cost effective to repair. So we're trying to make sure we're getting there and being more aware of that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Again, one more. Yep. So there was a slide that talked about losses. There's a new report from FEMA that talks about estimated annual earthquake losses. They talk about it at a national level, and across the US, its annual expected earthquake losses are on the order of $14 billion. About $10 billion are expected to come from California's risk. Total expected loss from earthquakes. Total economic exposure across the United States is $100 trillion from earthquake losses. And 30% of that roughly is from California. So you can see the numbers are staggering in terms of financial aspects of earthquake. We're doing good on. You may not be able to get back in your building until you be able to repair it. And that's the problem that's causing these long recovery times, and our communities aren't going to be able to recover in the time they're asking for us to be providing them. Next slide, please. So I want to just make sure I pause here for a second because this is not a new concept, and there actually is a lot of science and data that goes behind this. Like I said, there's been a 20-year investment on the order of millions of dollars and a lot of research and data collection by FEMA to quantify not just the safety performance, but repair costs, recovery time, even the carbon impact of the damage that happens to buildings. So we have these reports from FEMA that have been released over the last 20 years. Next slide. They've quantified performance graphically. They've done a little bit of the public outreach. Next slide. Similar to what you've all done here. You've done a great job of your publication a few years back of the expected earthquake performance of buildings in California. We could be updating this publication, and we would be happy to work with you on updating. Think about the recovery aspects and parameters and actual data and statistics One more click, please. You have this table that uses words and generalizations. We could actually start to fill that in with some numbers for you too. Next slide. This report to Congress that we just finished, it got published a couple of years ago now, coming up with 7 primary recommendations that set the groundwork for where we need to go from here. You'll see the top 3 are, if we want to do better at recovery time, we need to be more intentional about how we're designing our buildings. We can't hope that the building code is doing recovery time when right now that's not what the primary purpose of the building code is. The primary purpose is safety. So if we want better recovery time, we need to be more intentional about it. We also recognize there's things beyond the built environment. There are the people, the social, the human side of things, and you'll see recommendations 5, 6, and 7. It wasn't just an engineering document. It was a public, social, a lot of different community advocates involved in this process too. Next slide, please. We talk about coming up with design criteria. This design criteria is something we're working on right now, and we'll be ready to propose some recommendations for building code development in the next 2 years to have design criteria to meet certain recovery times. We're debating what those recovery times should be. Next slide, please. There's actions in this report that are charged to the federal government, or at least recommended to the federal government, or what Congress and federal agencies could be doing. And there's mention of similar actions that could be taken by state agencies. You've seen how California has led by example in the past on things like green building design, sustainable design, energy efficiency standards, even automobile standards. California's led the nation in these sorts of things, and California could be doing the same for site. Next slide, please. Again, a lot of ongoing work. I'm going to highlight 2 more things, and then I'm going to let you get on to the rest of your agenda. The NEHRP seismic provisions and the EERI-SEOC joint policy agenda. Next slide, please. So the NEHRP, that's the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program. It has 4 or 5 federal agencies involved with it. They come up every 6 years with new recommendations for seismic design provisions. Those recommendations are a source document to what becomes our national model code. But I want to be clear, the National Model Code is not a federal government publication. It is a private agency. The International Code Council owns and maintains the model building code. And so there are stakeholders that are involved, and things that FEMA and the federal government recommend don't always get into the national model codes. And so the report to Congress mentions that these are great things that are going to be coming from the NEHRP seismic provisions, but we want to make sure that jurisdictions at the state and local level know that they should be ready and willing to customize their building codes to support their local needs for building. Next slide, please. This is what we're doing. We're talking about this. I could come tell, and I've been talking to Ja in the back a little bit about this as well, because I think there's a lot of technical advancements we're making. Next slide, please. This is the time frame. So proposals should be ready in early 2025. We will send them off to the ASCE, to the IBC. We think some of those could be ready for early adoption by California in the 2028 California Building Code. And as I mentioned, California has led the way in early adoption in the past for things like green building standards, energy efficiency, tall wood construction. Some of these topics have been implemented early by California. But the issue we're having is that besides DSA, OSHPD, HCI for hospitals, maybe HD for some of the residential buildings, there's no state agency that has the authority to change building standards for things like pharmacies and groceries, and maybe even some of our commercial retail buildings that we need to have. That's what we've been trying to do legislatively, is to get that authority given to the right state agency to help us adopt these amendments that suit California's recovery needs. Next slide, please. Again, we're talking about an annual expected loss of $10 billion, on the order of $10 billion as our risk here in California. Collectively, on the order of 30 trillion. Next slide, please. So last thing, the EERI-SEOC joint policy agenda. This is something that we issued recently in response to the Turkey earthquake. We've identified 3 key priorities for California to reduce our seismic risk and our earthquake risk. One is to identify and retrofit existing vulnerable. A lot about mitigation programs. We do believe that is the most important thing, and we would encourage you to focus on housing, because as you've seen in the pandemic, houses also served as schools and served as temporary medical facilities. Houses are key to our community recovery. Healthcare is next in line. Hospitals do have seismic safety and seismic retrofit programs in place, but they tend to be threatened with legislative action to continue to reduce their effectiveness, and it's something we need to keep. And lastly, find a way for California to get ready to adopt a building code or amendments to the building code that can help. Right now, our communities are at risk. We can control our destiny, but we need some additional help to get us there. So I know that SEOC and ERI are committed to partnering with groups like the Seismic Safety Commission, with OES, state agencies we appreciate had in the past. And it's something we hope you can be informed, because this commission serves a really important role in informing our stakeholders, our elected officials, other agency representatives of what our building codes are achieving and ways we could do better. All right, maybe I didn't make 10 minutes, but I did my best. So I'm happy to come back if there's not enough time.
A couple of questions for Mr. Kirsting. I thank you very much. I know this is important work.
Thank you for your time. Look forward to more conversations.
Next item on our agenda are miscellaneous announcements. I will turn this to the executive director.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. I wanted to take the opportunity first to introduce our 2 new staff. We recently had 2 staff come on, so we now are fully staffed. You met one of them at our last meeting. So Lozano is in the back there. Chris, stand up for a second, please. Hello, Chris. Chris Lozano comes actually from Cal OES's hazard mitigation branch. And so we're very excited to have him as part of our team. He has also a lot of years in the education arena. So thank you, Chris. We're excited to have you. He will be our lead on our fire station inventory project. And then our other new hire is Trinity Gleckler. Sorry, Trinity, I always do that, trip over your name. Trinity comes to us. She's back there. Say hello. She comes to us from the private sector. This is her first state job, so we're excited to have her as part of the state team, and she will be our lead on the Ferndale Turkey report. So thank you, Trinity. We look forward to both of you working with us on the team. And then a quick mention that we are going to relocate from our West Sacramento office to the Mather complex here on August 23rd. So we've been busy packing up our office, and thank you to the team for all of that work, because it's a big lift in the midst of everything else that we're doing. And then I wanted to mention 2 things that affect resilience in California and just really quickly speak about them. One is the impact of homeowner insurance changes in California. So many of you may be aware that State Farm and Allstate have decided they are no longer writing new business in the state of California. And farmers also mentioned that they will not be picking up any additional business beyond what they normally do, which is about 7,000 policies per year, I believe. So that does mean that it's going to be more difficult for some people to potentially purchase homeowners insurance and maybe getting more expensive. And when that happens, oftentimes the purchase of earthquake insurance is something that falls off the table. So something for us to be watching and just thinking about. That's the negative impact to this affecting resilience in the state of California potentially. And from a positive impact, $15 million was put back into the state budget for the multifamily soft story program. The California Residential Mitigation Program, which is a joint venture between Cal OES and the California Earthquake Authority, will be administering that program. So we look forward to seeing how that rolls out. So that is a seismic retrofit of multifamily housing. And I am done.
Anyone have questions for the executive director? I will reiterate then, as we close this, to thank the staff for all of your work on our behalf, and also to welcome our 2 new members of the staff. It's been a long time, and I'm sure all of us would volunteer to pack boxes. I'm just kidding. How to spend your August vacation time. Next item on our agenda is public comment. This is for items that we did not have on the agenda earlier in the day, and we welcome public comment. If anyone here in our meeting, turn around. No one is jumping up. Virtually, we have a few members of the public. Does anyone wish to speak to us? Please use the raised hand feature to let us know. Don't see anyone, so I'm going to close public comment and say congratulations. And so thank you all for taking the time to be with us today, and we will see you at our October meeting, and hopefully more of us can be in person. Have safe travels if you're here and traveling home, and thank you everyone who joined us virtually. This meeting is adjourned.